Welcome to Afterthoughts. This is the podcast where we give you our thoughts after we have watched something. Probably an interesting discussion tonight. We'll get into that. I'm your host, Ryan King, and with me we have John Garcia.
Hey, this is room 304 in the Adults Learning Annex, right? Because I heard there's an audition here for a podcast co-host.
Yes, we're going to ask you so many weird questions about your past and your life.
Weird answers ready, I suppose. I did ballet for 12 years of my life, all in front of a podcast mic. So,
yeah, and now you're prepared for the slow crawl to death.
I suppose, yeah.
Yes. We are talking about a Japanese 1999 Japanese movie Audition, which I see here the description: a sweet rom-com about a lonely Japanese businessman whose idea is to hold an audition for a new girlfriend and opens his heart in ways he never thought possible.
That is one way to capture this movie.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess it isn't wrong. The sweet part is probably the only part that's wrong in that.
Yeah, it's like sweet for maybe like 10 minutes, sort of, but that's all part of, you can tell that it's not supposed to be.
Yeah, it's unsettling.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll like intro it a little bit. I will say, if this is something that you might want to watch, it is a horror movie. I will say it is a horror movie or thriller, however you want to necessarily describe it. This is definitely something to watch, not to hear us talk about and then go watch. I mean, that's fine if that's what you're into, but this is something I definitely recommend to people going in blind, because it definitely is. It's a shock. It makes you think. It definitely makes you uncomfortable. Even me saying that doesn't take away from it. Will make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I will say on repeated viewings, it probably still does make you uncomfortable, but it's good if you just kind of go into it and just let it set the pace and expectations for you. So come back later and potentially listen to us after that. That would be nice. But we'll start digging into it. I pretty certain I saw this in like 2001, maybe. No, probably 2000. Actually, now that I think about it. And whenever the DVD probably came out in the States, it probably wasn't too long after that. I was particularly into anime. Probably you know that if you listen to this, especially there around the turn of the century. And horror was the other thing I was really getting into. And so, yeah, kind of towards the tail end of my high school and the beginning of college years, I was watching either anime or horror. And this being a Japanese horror, I'd heard this is like one of those that you should look out for. It's like excellent, great horror movie kind of thing on lists. I got the DVD of it. I watched it. I was like, fuck yeah, this is something else.
Yeah.
And I watched it several other times since then and shown it to other people. But then I haven't watched it again in years. But it is in the back of my mind when things come up. And I will say I haven't really seen it talked about the way I do remember seeing it on like lists of like cult movies, cult horror movies you should check out that you probably haven't watched. Which I feel like anytime I click an article now that's like top 10 movies you haven't heard of or haven't watched, I'm like, dude, those are the first top 10 you haven't watched.
Yeah.
You haven't even gotten to the next 10 below that, much less the bottom of the barrel. We'll be checking in on John's sanity over the course of this month.
Yeah, of course. It is, of course, Mental Health Awareness Month again for me.
Yes, for John, as he scrapes the bottom of the barrel. But I wanted to revisit it and see, did it hold up kind of the way I remember? What did I remember of it? And to go back and see it and see what you all thought about it. What I remember when I first saw it was like, wow, that was fucked up, and it made me feel really uncomfortable. Like it really excels at being uncomfortable, while not necessarily being the like Saw or Hostel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
it's probably similarly uncomfortable, I guess, but not the same gratuitousness.
Yeah.
And it does set a really good unsettling tone the whole time. Something like, I would say more like Get Out or Midsommar now, or Hereditary even, like kind of give you like a feel the whole time through that you're like, just stuff is off. It's weird. Like, I'm just getting bad vibes from everything.
Yeah.
and I vaguely remembered some of the details. So coming back to it, there was a bit where I was like, oh, yeah, okay, now I'm remembering this. There's some things in my head that were a little bit different, I guess, my head canon of it over the years. But watching again, I was like, yeah, this is something else. It is something else. I don't know if it's necessarily like the greatest horror movie or top 10 horror movie or something like that, but I do think it's something that if you're into horror and breaking down how a horror movie works, or you're interested in it, or you do really want to see something, you're like, this is kind of gonna, I don't know, scare. Does this movie scare people, John? I don't know.
I had nightmares after, so I just.
I did too. Amazing, yeah. I did too. They weren't about this movie or anything related, but I totally did.
I think my brain was just working out whatever uncomfortable feelings it had.
Yeah, that's funny. That's fair. Okay, so you can get that from this. Yeah, no, this is definitely going to make you uncomfortable. This is a Takashi Miike film. I watched this and Ichi the Killer. I think because I had watched this, I watched that like right afterwards. I do remember that. I think I watched a couple of other things of his. Those are the two that definitely stand out in my mind. And I will say on this rewatch, like, it held up. I was able to kind of appreciate more, since it's been so many years about movie making, that I could kind of look at the choices and why things were uncomfortable. It also was a fun look back on technology. Yeah. Like, I was just remembering, like, just seeing like the old phone, the old fucking computers, all the paper, John. There's just paper so everywhere. Just piles and piles of paper.
The video cameras.
Cameras. That was fun for me. But John, what was your take? And is this your first seeing, or have you seen it before?
Yeah, this is my first time seeing Audition, and it was real fucked up. It was a real fucked up movie. I went into it not knowing anything, and I the only thing that I saw was when I went to look it up to play it, they like kind of spoil the movie with their fucking movie thumbnail by having her there in her like outfit, and I was like, come on, man, like, just show me like the actual like audition seat or something, have an abstract, and then let me figure it out. But I was like, all right, some shit's gonna happen there, but I don't know what. And so when it started off and it was basically like two bros complaining about the current state of women in Japan, and like one of them, trying to find love, but in like the worst fucking, most unethical way. Not most unethical. There's plenty more unethical ways, but one of the unethical ways that you could do it. I was like, all right, I can see what this movie's setting up. I know exactly where we're going to go. But even when it took me there, it like constantly would change just a little bit of what I was expecting it to do. And that really kept me on my toes. Like, I think by the end of the movie, I was so disturbed with everything that had happened, but also sad. I think my Letterboxd review is all of my onomatopoeia reactions to how it went down. So you can follow the timeline of my thoughts at any point in the movie. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's something that it's one of those movies that I will watch again, but because it was so upsetting, I won't watch it for a while. And I'll probably just recommend that some of my other friends who are into horror, like, check it out if they haven't seen it. But if they're like, you want to watch it with us? I'm going to be like, nah, I'm probably going to pass. I'll see it again later or something. But I really loved it. I thought the performances were great too. And the way that like the surreal elements of it were added and blended, and like, it started to feel like a paranormal investigation movie at one point, and then it felt kind of like a rom-com. I felt like it used tonal changes really well, and it went in and out of these different, all while maintaining the through line of where the fuck is this going and how bad is it going to end, kind of throughout. Like, even when it's at its most playful, something feels wrong, and I felt like that was just really well done. So I think it's also my first Miike film, so haven't seen any of his other work, but I'm interested to check it out and kind of afraid.
Yeah, I mean, he's different. He's made a lot of stuff since this that I haven't really kept up, but would be interested in kind of checking out what else he's been doing since then. Because this was probably kind of what brought him out.
Yeah.
He had done another horror movie before, but this is the one that then
Put him
got
on
him
the
a
map.
cult following. Yeah, got a cult following and had like was shown at various festivals and stuff and kind of won some awards and picked it up. And then yeah, he kind of went after and had a good run from there.
Yeah.
And then is definitely known as like a horror, big Japanese horror. So Darla watched it with me.
Oh.
She gave it an, I don't know how I feel about it. It was uncomfortable. She felt like it was really slow for a while.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting because it feels like simultaneously slow and fast. It definitely feels slow in the beginning and then it speeds up at the end. And in particular in this viewing, I did notice, like I say, kind of coming back to it and having seen so many more movies now and having more of appreciation, the choices that Miike make that are just different from what you see in movies normally. Sometimes even in horror movies, like he does make some really different, bold choices. Here we go. High level, the plot. This Japanese businessman, his wife passed away, seemingly terminal illness, cancer or something, it appears, when his son was young. He's since then raised his son as a single father. We kind of get that, a little bit at the beginning to then transition into the two of them together. His son just says to him, like, you should remarry. You seem...
Why don't you just go out and get remarried, Dad?
Yeah, just go get remarried.
Problem solved.
Which the dad takes a little too literally because he pretty much is just ready to get married in like 72 hours after that statement.
He's like Ocean's 11ing his life where he's like, we got a plan now. We're going to walk in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm not exactly sure what his job is. Something in the biz, I guess. But he has a friend who produces movies and TV.
Yeah, and he has a secretary that looks at him weird for reasons.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's some of those like uncomfortable scenes that you kind of get a sense of something and have like a guess that early on, yeah, he's like leaving his office and she runs out after she's like says bye to him or whatever. And then she runs out after him while he's at the elevator and she's like, I'm getting married. And he's like, okay, yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
And then she just stands there uncomfortably staring at him until he gets into the elevator and leaves.
Gosh.
And you just have this like, yeah, Darla immediately was like, that's not the reaction she wanted from him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely she's into him, which you see again later, another scene that's kind of similarly uncomfortable.
The saddest character.
Yeah, he goes out drinking with his buddy, who telling him about this wanting to meet someone, and they're complaining about meeting women and, getting what you want, and him being older and wanting, knowing more about life. But then he totally targets younger women because I do think that that's one of the things about this movie is there is definitely an undertone of certain toxic masculinity, certain like kind of creepiness of the industry, like in auditioning women, and he ends up. His friend says, "Oh, you should just." I don't know if he's like done this before. Like he acted so just casually.
He's like the Hitch of unethical casting directors.
Yes, he's like, yeah. What we'll do is we'll put on a fake movie, more or less, and then we'll audition for the heroine of it, and you'll pick your wife out of this group that comes into audition. She won't get the movie role. Like she'll just be one of the not quite as goods. Is good for a wife.
What is he reason? He's like, because she'll be happy. Because like only the best actors are not happy or some shit like
right,
that.
Yeah, they can draw on their sadness or whatever. Which then is not the choice he made. He doesn't end up picking one of the happy girls. So he tells him what all he wants out of a girl and then gets essentially fucking 1,000 resumes, 300 resumes, something ridiculous to dig through. Yeah. That was definitely the paperwork. He has them just like all on his desk in these piles, reading through all of their stats. They each had to write a little essay, like all this creepy stuff. And he's spills coffee serendipitously onto one of the resumes and then pulls it out and is immediately, I think he even just sees the picture and he can tell he's immediately infatuated. He reads her essay where she says, and this is our first moment of like, like he's immediately infatuated, and then her essay is that she was a ballet student and then into ballet until she was 18 and busted her hip, and that was the only thing that she loved, and now she can't do it anymore, so she knows what it's like to die.
Yeah, she just straight up writes that. It's like the darkest poetry, like emo
and
out
that
of high school.
Yeah, life is just eventually some disappointment, inevitably.
She is Batman.
Yes. And then I guess he reflects back on like, yeah, that's how I felt about my wife dying. We're kindred souls now. But yeah, it was like, this is your first sign, dude, of like, okay, maybe that's an interesting thought to have with someone after you know them for a few years and you get into some really like deep conversations.
Yeah.
But the essay for you trying to be an actress.
He like develops, it's an immediate like parasocial relationship where he's like projecting so much onto her about what he's going to do and like who she is and whatever. He's made up his mind already.
Yep. Yeah, they hold the audition. We get sort of a funny series of funny / also weird and creepy series of different girls coming in, and they're asking different questions. Many just straight up inappropriate. Granted, some of the women just walk in and just undress without even being asked,
some are
or
like
just
doing
divulge.
like flag routines and shit, and
yeah,
it's its own thing.
Until his girl comes in, and again, he's already. Well, I mean, he's even like asking his buddy, like he's like circled her name on when she's coming up in the rotation, and asked his buddy about her, and like he's made up his mind. And then she comes in. You know, they interview her. Really, this is the first time he asks anything, and he doesn't as much interview as just say your essay was awesome.
Yeah, he doesn't even ask her a question. He just says your essay about you dying. Like that was pretty raw. Yeah, he just lets it. And his buddy's like, "Is that it? Like, what are you?"
Yeah. He calls her up, I guess, and they go on a date. I don't know if she thinks. I mean, I guess we know. You know, from watching the rest of the movie, she doesn't care. I don't know if she thinks like, oh, he's going to talk about the part, or if she knows like this is the game you play to potentially get roles, or maybe she is attracted to him. It's never really clear.
Yeah. Her tone remains pretty, I would say it's like neutral. She plays the part of like a baby fawn. She sort of has that innocence and sweetness in her voice. And
she always wears a white dress. Mm-hmm. Every time we see her, maybe even the same white dress. It's not clear.
Yeah,
and very much presents this like quiet, honestly, like boring. Where I guess he gets to paint whatever he wants on her, because I was just like, there's no conversation to be had in this. He just talks.
She's like a Stephanie Meyer character. You just step into her, and then just fine.
And then he continues to get infatuated with her, but he tries to pull up, these contacts from her past and can't find jack shit out about her.
That's where, that trope happens in like so many movies. I just want to know at what route are you able to, is there like a safe word for friends where you're like, no, but for real, like don't fuck around with
you
this.
Can tell your friend like this
buddy,
I'm not.
Yeah. His buddy was like, look, I couldn't pull these things up. And he's like, well, maybe, whatever. And then like, it becomes like a thing that's recurring where he clearly is in over his head, but he talks like tough, where he's just, I guess, another toxically masculine thing where he's like, I'm just gonna, whatever happens, I can deal with it.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. This is I'm an adult. Like,
yeah. He has this idea probably too that she's like soft and weak woman sort of in his mind. He's like, she's a flower to him, and nowhere near as capable as she actually is. And so he's just kind of overly confident about, well, what could possibly go wrong? Even if she was near somebody who is my age who disappeared a year and a half ago, what could happen?
Who is also a music producer that, she auditioned for. So I'll say, we'll kind of pause there. I won't go through the whole plot but it'd be good. Like there is that kind of that turning point. The beginning of the movie, right, is sort of this build to, honestly, it could be a rom-com. Like if it ended up being a meet cute instead of a meet creepy, this movie have continued and no one would have looked at it, one way or the other. But so thinking back on kind of that, like what I would say that first half, going into it, blind, John, what were you feeling? What were you thinking? What were you noticing?
Well, a lot of the shots then, I feel like even throughout the movie, they kind of persist this way, but in the first half, it's really noticeable where like in a rom-com, so let's just assume that they made an American version, a Western version of this with Tom Hanks, because I want to. Like they have
Actually, I was gonna say Dixon would be in for that if it's exactly this movie.
The end, yes. If the ending, is
yeah, the ending is included. Yes,
that is correct. Where is that guy? We'll get Dixon's thoughts on this later in another episode. But yeah, like I envision. Let's just say it's You've Got Mail's cast. Why not? Meg Ryan is her and Tom Hanks is this guy. You have these like really warm shots of those characters in like that kind of American cinema context for a rom-com where like everything's just a little bit more saturated. The lighting is very soft. It's not like classic Hollywood soft, but it's like romantic and different. And even out in the streets of New York where like there's a man taking a dump in an alleyway, there's still like some kind of warm lighting that can gloss over that part of it.
Yeah, but everything's sort of out of focus beyond them.
Yeah. They cover it up with bokeh. And like, but here there is not that intimacy. It's either, to me, it felt either a little bit claustrophobic, like the pull-in shots for the characters were just a little too close, so it's unsettling subconsciously, or it's voyeuristic, and the shots are like left wide, and they're done in like as few takes as possible, where like I think the opening sequence with his son where they're eating, not the opening but like when they're eating breakfast after everything has happened with his wife and he's widowed, the camera just lingers and it doesn't show his face for so long.
It's behind him.
Yeah. It's always behind him when he's doing dishes, when he's eating, like it's all his son's face. And it kind of reminded me of like in Tokyo Sonata, when the camera would do that, it would pull back and not show you the actual impacted character's face. It would just show you the people who reacted to them. And so I picked up on that and it made me uncomfortable after a while. Like I felt like I was invading his privacy and I was kind of voyeuristically, but I felt like that was to keep you at arm's length from him, to not have you be fully in his head and as convinced, so that by the time you got to like some of the twists and the way that he was sort of going through this relationship, that you could see that he was already approaching it from the wrong direction. And like, it was fascinating to me. So yeah, like the first hour, I felt like that pull of, oh, this could be a rom-com easily. But everything about the camera techniques and the way that they presented, even the cuts could be harsh. It never lets you like lull into that little cozy space of like, oh, it's going to be a meet cute. Like he's going to be happily ever after. Like I never felt that for him. I only felt a slow creeping sense of dread of like, where's this going again? Like what's going to happen?
Slow your roll, dude. Yeah. That was definitely in that same scene, what you're talking about, the dinner, is when I kind of first noticed that piece. And I said that to Darla. I was like, dude, how interesting is this that we're zoomed out and there's no 1-2 cut that you would expect of two people talking at dinner. And then they do the same thing. He meets his friend in the bar, and most of the time we're hanging out where we can see the bar, the bartender, the two of them, like a good chunk or back of another person at the bar, and all the people in the far background in that shot. And they're talking, and we're kind of at the side. Like, it's not like we're looking at them on the bar. We're like to the side of them at the bar. Yeah. And it stays zoomed out the whole time. And that's what I was like, that's what slows the movie down initially. Is if you have those like long uncuts, like it feels longer and just draws out the scenes. Like, and I always think of like Westerns. Westerns have that, zoomed out, the two cowboys on the end of town, and you wait, and there's this like uncomfortable long waiting. And it's because there's no cuts, which is why Young Guns sucks as a Western.
You just been waiting.
It's fucking like all cuts.
Yeah. I definitely could sense, because you could see something like that bar scene being shot the editing would pick up the pacing, even if it was going to be the exact same dialogue. You show interspliced cuts of them taking drinks. He's stirring his drink pensively. Like trying to draw your attention to these moments, these like smaller moments to like show you what the characters are thinking. But instead you are kept at a distance, like you're sitting at a bar or like you're sitting at a table over near on the other side and you're waiting on your order and you're just kind of watching this scene unfold in front of you. It has that impersonal touch.
Interesting. I don't know if this was exactly intended or not, because I did notice the camera movement later that didn't have the same effect. But at the bar, at one point, it cuts to the bartender's face as he's like leaning over to give our main character like something. Where before, when he's put stuff on or given him drinks, it's been at this zoomed out view, but it cuts to the bartender's face and you can tell he's looking directly at them while they're talking.
Yeah.
And then we get a POV, you're a bartender in a creepy movie view of like from where the bartender is. We get the one time are we in what you would normally see in the shot of two people at a bar, where we're behind the bar and we see the two of them. And the camera actually has like movement to it. It's not a steady cam. And I would say 98% of the time in this movie, it's a steady held cam. There's not that movement. And so I was like, is this intended to be you're voyeuristically listening in on this conversation? Yeah, I was like, we're the bartender for that one moment. And so, I think that beginning has this, that real feel. Like when you kind of get into he's going on dates with this girl and it's always, you're away from the table, often behind him, and hearing their conversations. And then, we go to some next scene or whatever, and they go on another thing. It's very, very rare that we have the like back and forth takes. Her whole interview at the beginning is from behind her. We've watched all the other auditions. We see either all of them in the room or we're behind the table with the two interviewers and see the girl center frame, doing whatever. We did a couple times. It's through the camera. There's a couple like funny, like fast forward camera, like blending them all together, kind of like montage-y shit.
Yeah.
But then when our girl comes in, we're behind her and you do not see her face at all for that whole interview. All of it, you're pulled back. And then it slowly zooms in on the main character while he's interviewing. It doesn't, going into her. Yeah. And then interestingly, right after she goes out, he goes and he sits in the audition chair and we get a shot like we're from above him, like we're the camera watching. So there's these huge, like, voyeuristic undertone or even necessarily like we're out of the loop on what's going on.
Yeah. It's interesting to have that continuity too. Like I feel like at times it latches into that continuity to bring you into an unsettled space. Because I think that's like the barrier between being an audience member and being a bystander for what happens in the film, where, if we were to continue to sit at that end of the table in the bar, or if we were sitting where a camera would be propped normally for shooting that like audition sequence, then we might feel a little bit more like, okay, I guess I'm just watching the dialogue play out. But because of the way the camera work is done, the continuity of characters that have to be in frame or like where it's positioned, it makes you feel like it's almost taking your agency away as an audience member in a way that like transitions you to being there. Sort of like when we can't see her face and you're like zooming in on him, there's that moment where you're like, oh, we're just not going to see. I guess we're going to see like what his reaction is. You're being sucked into his reaction to her. But like before that, you are kind of standing in that room with him awkwardly and watching people like audition. And you might very well be the camera person who's like having to sit there and record and like
through
that
all this
montage
shit,
is you like fast forwarding through all of it and whatever else. Even moments in between, like when he's waiting for her to come up in the audition, he goes out, he's like, I need to take a break real quick. I need to go to the bathroom. And he goes and like spies in the audition room where everybody's waiting, or the waiting room. And we get that moment where he's like looking around, and it kind of reminds me of like what Spielberg does, where he'll like show a character looking somewhere. He like tries to build up the tension, but like immediately he's looking around and we're like, well, he's obviously not going to the restroom. And it hard cuts to the sort of handheld footage as well of him like spying on her, and he can see her reading a book at the table, and the camera's just like a little bit got something blocking a little bit of the side. It's like peeking in and stalking her.
Yeah. And then yeah, as we get into sort of the second half of the movie, there are some like flashes earlier in the movie where I think early in the movie it's mainly he flashes to remembering his wife
Yeah.
in a moment, or potentially kind of seeing her somewhere. As the movie grows, when he tends to flash to see her, she's like almost spying on him. I feel like she's like behind a tree, like peeking out at one point, and she's like at the table next to him at a restaurant at one point,
Yeah.
like just shit like that. But there's more like, and these are blink and you miss it like shots. They're so quick, and they're that sort of horror thing to freak you out because you just see something freaky for a fraction of the twins in The Shining for a fraction of a second, right? Kind
Yeah.
of thing. So there's a little bit of that, and it grows more as the movie goes on, and the pace gets more frantic. And in particular, I noticed kind of after I would say definitely the turn is after he's gone on some dates, he decides to take her on a weekend holiday to the beach, where he's going to propose. Honestly, this is like a week. Maybe there's some days
It's
between,
insane how he's
it's
like,
fast.
I'm going to propose to her the second week or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, it's really fast. She disappears in the morning. He wakes up and he can't find her.
She disappears after I thought she bagged him. I thought she literally bagged him.
Yeah.
Gonna have
It makes the sound, yeah, like when they roll over, yeah. He runs to his friend and is like trying to get some info from him, and we actually get the 1-2 cuts you would expect.
Yep.
Like that scene is absolutely fast cuts, constantly 1-2 back and forth in that room because our character is now like frantic, and it's adding to our pace of what the fuck is going on and like our confusion. And so I think it's interesting that there's that slowness at the beginning, very few cuts, and then we definitely get a lot more cuts, a lot more like uncomfortable closeness shots, things like that from going forward in that.
Yeah. It slides into the next like genre. It's gone beyond the rom-com because like on the cusp of what would be sort of the fantastic summer getaway when he's like, we're going to this fucking hotel and we're going to go to the museums, and like that whole scene is so uncomfortable because it's in a way I could see it in another movie being poetic and kind of like, I just want you to look upon me and know that I'm a flawed human or something. But here he's like, we can still go to the museum if we have time. And she's just like getting undressed quietly, not saying anything, not acknowledging him, getting into bed. And he's like, so we're like not going to go out, or like what's going on? Like, yeah. And then like the moment that she bags him, that's when like there's a fast cut that happens. And then from there, it's just fast paced, like editing to get him into that hecticness and like his friend scream. Like him and his friend yell at each other. He yells at his friend especially, and then leaves and is like, I'll show you. I'm a big boy. I can take care of myself. I'm going to find her. And like, he just leaves and goes on this, and it becomes like a detective story where he's now trying to piece together who was she, where was she, what pieces can he find in her backstory that could lead him to her. And
we can get into trying to interpret the ending stuff, but I do think that this movie is better as a mood than necessarily trying to be like, oh, here's exactly what happened, or here's exactly who, these people are, the truth or whatever. It is much more a movie of like the creepiness. Like that's what you got. Our first like hint that this movie is not a rom-com, or maybe something a little bit weird, other than like her previous producer has been missing for 18 months, and like every so often we check back with his friend, and his friend's like, I couldn't find this place, I couldn't call this person, like she doesn't appear to have. And then every time he asks her about it, she has this like, well, I didn't really know him, the producer. I just said that because it would look good on the resume. And like she gives
him the answer that he needs to just continue believing.
Yeah, and they in their little conversations sort of have these pretty good red flags that he blows off.
Yep.
Even things that are like maybe aren't necessarily a red flag. But I was saying to Darla, I'm like, how many dates would it take for someone wearing the exact same thing for you to be like, this isn't gonna work? Or and I guess like she's wearing white dresses, and the way they are, it isn't immediately clear if they're like are the same dress. So I kind of feel like the second date, I would probably have been like, okay, like, well, maybe this is a different dress. I don't remember exactly the dress in the first date.
That's kind of I feel like that's a mind game, right? The movie plays a little bit of a mind game with you when they're on those dates because they do sort of a montage. It feels like kind of Lynchian, I guess, in the way that it's
the time is unclear. Yeah,
where they just cut. At one point, I was like, they're doing kind of back cuts here and there, occasionally across the restaurant and showing them, and then they just do one cut, and you're just in a totally different restaurant, but the conversation's being carried on the same, like in the same momentum. And it took my brain a second to be like, oh, we're somewhere else. Oh, it's like later now. Okay, like here we go. And I think that her wearing that white outfit is sort of the continuity needed to not let you immediately dissociate from like, oh, okay, we're further along.
I also think it has the like what he wants. Like it's a bridal outfit, not
Symbol of
necessarily.
purity.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the color of a bridal outfit in Japan, but at least I can see that interpretation. But it is simply a purity. Like he does see her as this like, he wants someone who's an accomplished artist and pure, and like he has these expectations,
but must also be 20 to 30 years old. And
yes. She doesn't. His son he says to his son her age, and his son's like, he's closer to my age than your age. Like, it was one of those creepy things. Yeah.
His son is very supportive of it, but I would have been like, that's kind of weird, Dad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's not what I meant when I said you should get remarried, Dad. Also, not this next weekend. I meant like, which is weird that his son said that anyway. Like even at the beginning, like I'm immediately like, you just tell him like you should date. Like don't tell him he has to marry.
Yeah,
like
that's one of those
jump to that,
Dad. Maybe you should go to like a farmer's market or like a pumpkin patch, Dad. Like
get out, go do something.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm definitely like the third date. I'm like, white dresses, huh? Like you're really into those. After they go on this outing and she disappears, he tries to go find out where she's been. The first kind of like actually weird beyond like the conversations are uncomfortable and all that is that his buddy tells him like, cool off for a bit before calling her. You're not supposed to, you're not supposed to go on a date and then call the first date and then call him that night, right? Like you gotta like let it cool a little bit.
Yeah.
Probably also to give like some space to the creepy idea that as a producer, you hold an audition and then call one of them up to bang them.
And you keep talking to them constantly, but not telling them anything about the role. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like you gotta let some time pass. He waits. I don't know, not very long.
He's so resolved for like a day.
Yeah. And then he cracks and calls her. We see her waiting by the phone,
right? Like before that, like before he's even called her, we get cuts between him and her where he'll like pick up the phone and then put it back down. But it always cuts away to just showing like her sitting in this like small flat. And there's a big sack. It looks like Santa's bag. Or the fucking one that they used to capture Santa in The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
And there's just a phone dragged out to the middle of the room and her just sitting there immobile. Like, it's almost like a creature that's powered down. I thought she was going to be like an eldritch horror, like when I saw that. Because it was just one of those like, does she just power on whenever a man like lusts over a woman and then...
Yeah, and then like a succubus kind of thing. Yeah. You're right, because we see the bag phone in her a couple of times, and you definitely have this like, the fuck is that bag?
Fuck's that bag doing back there?
Yeah, and I think even I'm pretty certain the first time Darla was like, that music producer's in that bag. Was like your immediate like first thought probably. Yeah. So when he does end up like calling her back after this quiet period, she gets up and answers the phone. She gets a creepy smile we get zoomed in on.
Yeah.
And she gets up and answers the phone. And then when she hangs the phone up, the bag makes some unearthly sound and,
And it moves
and
around.
rolls over. Yeah.
It's like a Silent Hill creature. Jesus.
Yes. Yeah. No, actually, it's funny you bring that. I had Silent Hill vibes from this movie.
Yeah, I definitely got the same. I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, this is so creepy.
Which is interesting. I don't think I played Silent Hill 2 definitely in 2001. And so it was around the time I had seen this movie, but I don't know that I gelled that yet because I don't think I thought about Silent Hill in connection to other things over the years. The like concept of this town that feeds you back all of your psychological problems and makes you face them. The fact that he has these like confusing flashbacks, it's unclear what things are real or not real. Like totally in the Silent Hill game, it's like that. You're like, the people look like your dead wife for some reason. Conversations seem to have happened that didn't. People recognize you and then they don't. And like everything around you that's creepy is like a reflection of your own bizarre problems. And when he starts flashing and seeing like the different girls in his life, including his son's not even necessarily girlfriend, one-time acquaintance.
Yeah, that he like bro fists his son over basically.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man, take it easy here.
Yeah, that he, I totally got the like Silent Hill vibes of like, oh, this is a reflection of his weird hang-ups on women.
Yeah. And it's prevalent in everything that he kind of says and how he acts around it. The moment that he's willing to cast off like his best friend, I don't even know if they're best friends. It just seemed like they were.
Only friend?
He's just his only friend where he's just like, no, you're wrong. And I'm going to go find her because she's the one. And I was like, dude, how long did he know his wife before he married her? Like this guy, he's on the rebound so hard because his son sent him on the warpath. But it just like blinds him and it exposes so much where, like I was saying earlier with the rom-com vibes where you would normally feel endeared to a character and you would be like, oh, that's kind of, even though Tom Hanks is a big fucking mogul in Amazon books, basically, there's still something charming about him. But here it's like, no, like everything that he does, you're like, that's not a good look, dude. Like, that's not really good. You shouldn't be doing it this way. But he continues to ask his friend for forgiveness, basically, where he's like, and you're sure that this is okay? And he's like, yeah, done it all the time. And like, he's like, well, that's good enough for me. Like,
yeah, I'm good. All right, let's go.
So no wonder he's haunted.
Yeah, I guess he's a okay dad.
Yeah, I would say he's not a bad dad. Yeah. He does the dishes sometimes. He makes dinner for his son. He makes sure his son's alive, takes care of him. That's good enough qualification as a parent.
Yeah, like, yeah.
At least he's not okay. Like, hey, I'm going to be late and I'm going to miss your audition or other things. We never see that.
Yeah, I'm not going to your baseball game.
Yeah.
It seems like, he's accomplished in business, but not to the point that he isn't, familiar enough with his son. They hang out and they talk. They go fishing at the beginning of the movie. Like, it seems like that relationship's fine. I will say there's definitely some like, I don't know, for lack of any other word, like pedophile-ish undertones.
PDF file is what the kids call it.
Yes. In that when we see the girl waiting at the phone, she's sitting on the floor. Mm-hmm. What I've heard called W style, where you're kind of like on your knees, but your legs are splayed out to the side. Yeah. And it's something that you see little kids do. Like, that's exactly the way a little kid kind of sits on the floor because they're bendable in crazy ways. And is something that you're told is a potential sign for like autism or things like that. As kids get older, that they continue to sit that way is kind of a sign of developmental slowness or that's lacking.
Interesting.
His son is into dinosaurs.
Oh yeah,
like
he
hard.
Is. Dude, he loves dinosaurs.
Yeah. Which then kind of gives you, even though I think it does mention like his age or allude to it, it does give this sort of really young childness to it because the friend comes over and it's like, she was interested in dinosaurs and wanted to see my books. And they're on the floor looking at the books. The kind of thing there, I was thinking about that too. I'm like, what's the age where you would invite someone over to your house
to see your dinosaur books?
Well, or like to see anything and sit on the floor. And what's the age where you're like, here, have a seat on a regular piece of furniture?
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
some age where you pass that, right?
You're like, we're going to sit
Like-
on a couch now.
Yeah, I
I'll
can't
bring them up
imagine.
here.
Yeah, me seeing another 40-year-old and being like, oh, come over and check out my video game. And then we sit on the fucking floor and play it. But that was totally something like, in junior high and elementary, that's exactly the way you did it.
I think once you get past college and you have a sustainable living style, or like you get past high school and you've gotten a job and you can buy it, you're like, hey man, I paid for this couch. Okay, you got to sit on this.
Yeah.
Oh, we look at shit.
And then as we learn about the girl's background, she's had abuse when she was, or possibly had abuse when she was younger.
Yeah.
And he like envisions it. Like he doesn't, right? Like, I guess it's not something, it's interesting how
he has those like
he seems
flashback
to
moments
flash
into
to stuff.
her life. Yeah.
Yeah.
where he's like, oh,
and I did notice on this watch the one weird thing that gives me like, okay, maybe there is a little bit more under here that Miike is trying to give us than just like mood. At the beginning, in order to call out for the audition, they released to the radio this little thing that's like, hey, come in, be a heroine, in this thing or whatever.
yeah.
When he's in the car listening to it, which is one little nitpick, he turns the radio on
And it's just
exactly
there,
at the
it's going.
second that he needs to.
He knew. He's that
I hate
obsessed,
that.
Ryan.
Yeah. Well, and it wouldn't have bothered me if he was listening to some music and then it started, but he actually changes radio stations
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
then it starts. So he actively is going to that radio station knowing. Maybe they're like told him they were going to play at 3 p.m., but whatever.
Yeah.
While he's listening to that, it flashes to clearly a young girl in like a schoolgirl outfit,
Yeah.
sitting in the apartment, like looking out the window. It's raining, just like in his car, it's raining, which I thought was important that they're both raining to sort of, I think, potentially show that it's contemporary.
Yeah.
Which I was like, in his mind, is there a girl, a woman, something that's out there hearing this that's going to be the one for him?
Yeah.
And that's what he imagines. And we see her from the back, of course.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Also, the like sliding door, sort of like Japanese sliding door with little panels, paper panels in it or whatever.
Yeah.
Hers is kind of like really shitty in her apartment. And it's the same a window apartment and that shitty panel that we see later in her apartment. And so I was like, okay, then is he imagining the stuff in her apartment? Like maybe he's imagining her waiting by the phone for him and smiling when he finally calls, and she has nothing else going on in her life but waiting for him, which might be true. And he's putting together this image of her in his own mind.
The sack's not in it, but
maybe as the weird details come in, maybe.
It could be like a subconscious thing of like, oh, she's waiting for me. There's also that thing my friend told me about, like, who knows? And like being like, maybe it's a visual metaphor for the way that his mind has repressed that piece of it. Because like later we kind of see it come out and it gets like even weirder.
Yeah, that gets awesome. So yeah, let's jump into it gets weird.
Let's get to the weird part. Yeah, where it turns into a fever dream sequence.
Yeah, it goes from a fever dream. When they're out, and I guess he doesn't propose to her. I don't know. Like, yeah, she initiates sex again. I was wondering if a lot of this is his bad narrator.
Yeah,
to us.
Unreliable narrator.
Yeah, that he's like, oh, I didn't. Like she wanted to, right? I called her, but then she initiated. Right, she initiated it.
Stripped down herself. I just tried to talk about the museum times.
Yeah, we're just gonna go to the museum. She slow, creepy reveals, pulls up the sheet from her feet up while she's laying there naked to show that she has these burn marks on the inside of her thigh, and explains that she was abused. I don't know. She tells him, I guess, by the dance teacher, or does he reach some conclusion again? I'm not quite sure. Remembering back.
He finds it out later when he's like investigating her disappearance. But initially she just says, I just want you to know that like I've been abused. I'm scarred.
And that she just wants him to know everything about her, and that he can only love her. And then like she really drives home that point of like, you can only love me.
Yes. Only me. She emphasizes only me. And it's very much one of those like, wait a minute, like legally how only are we talking here? Like my son, or like just
are you implying just women or just you?
Yeah,
Like, which, like Darla immediately was like, oh, she means like only her. Like he can't love his son.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, maybe. Like you do kind of get that feeling even in that scene.
Yep.
When they roll over in the sheets, I swear it's the same sound as the bag. It's definitely a weird sound. Yeah, it's definitely a weird sound. And so, you do have that sense of like she had set up a bag. She
bagged him
for him. Yeah.
Audible continuity.
He goes to find, after she's disappeared and he's argued with his friend, he goes to find, I guess he goes first to the dance school, which is kind of a weird conclusion. So he doesn't know where she lived because the one time they went in a taxi together, she just got out on the street.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know where she lives. He looks up the dance school. It's been boarded up, closed down.
Yep.
He breaks in.
As one would, I suppose.
Darla laughed because he takes his shoes off, and I was like, it's Japanese. Like,
it's just
a superstition that is just what you do. It doesn't matter if it's boarded up, broken down place. You take your shoes off when you come
respect
inside.
The room.
Yep. There is a creepy old dance teacher playing the piano in the corner. He's wheelchair. We see his feet, and they're fucked up. It's not clear exactly what, but they're fucked up.
He's got like prosthetics or something.
Yeah, something. Yeah, it looks like they're like, I don't know. They
look like they're made out of clay.
Leather feet. They look like they're made out of like leather, human leather. This is totally like horror movie.
He starts asking him questions about her in a way that's very uncomfortable, where you're like, this guy knows something, but he won't say what he knows. He's just doing fucking riddles.
Well, he has some of the, like, he has a little stove next to him that he has little.
That's right.
Things in burning. I can't, like, it's not clear, like, kind of like the incense sticks. I don't know exactly what they are. And when we see those, we get a snap zoom in on them crackling, and then I think we get another look at them later, and then our main character, it seems like he envisions this guy is the one that used those sticks and burnt the girl's legs when she was young. Maybe did. I don't know. It's weird. I'm like, everyone's a horrible narrator in this. Like, at this point, you begin to wonder if you have any clue what's really going on.
Like, we're just still in the apartment, aren't we?
It could be, they're still at the apartment. It could be this girl is like a ghost and no one else saw her, and he's shit like this. The movie could turn in any direction. He goes to find this bar that she claims she worked at. She didn't have any
Stonefish
job rec. She didn't have any job rec when she came in, and they were like, well, how the fuck are you living if you have no jobs? You've had none. She's like, well, a couple days a week I help my friend out at her bar, and gives the bar name. He goes to the bar. It's also been closed and boarded up.
Mm-hmm.
And we get another classic horror trope of the creepy guy that walks by and is like, oh, that bar, it's been closed since someone was murdered there.
Yeah, nope, don't want to go to that bar.
That's the murder bar.
People bury their pets in that bar and come back different.
Yeah. And I guess he says that the owner was murdered. The building like leans, so the blood poured out into the hallway.
That was some fucking wild shit. Like, that neighbor was so casual about describing.
And I was like, he still lives there.
Yeah,
he was like excited to tell him.
He that neighbor tried to leave like 8 times and came back every time. He was like, "Hey, one."
Oh, did I mention the ear?
Yeah, chotomate. One more question, and he was just like, "Yes."
Yeah, apparently they also found an extra three fingers, an ear, and a tongue, I think.
Yeah, somebody was murdered, and then they found an extra few appendages.
We get a creepy flash to a tongue flopping around in blood on the ground, and the extra body parts laying around.
That really got me. I wasn't like, it didn't look super real, but it just, the flash combined with the image, I was like, ugh, God.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely strange. And that's where I'm like, is he imagining? Like, cause he heard that and then he thought
he has like a heart attack.
Cause he jumps back and kind of falls against the wall.
Yeah.
Like thinking about it.
He's so startled. Yep.
Yeah, and so I'm like, there's definitely that. What is he imagining these things, or what? That's not clear. Um, and then what? He goes back home. Like, I guess those are like the two things he looks up, right? Because that's all he knows.
That's basically, yeah, the only part of her bio. He knows the ballet school from her bio that she wrote in the application form, and then he knows the bar from what she's told him, because he was like, oh, maybe I should stop by and see you. And she's like, nope, don't do that. It don't bother. Again, another red flag. Somebody being like, no, you don't have to come where I work. That doesn't.
Yeah, my friend wouldn't like that. Yeah, don't go. We see totally Friday the 13th camera shot from outside the house. or Giallo, which I guess is what Friday the 13th is stealing, right? We totally see Giallo, Black Glove, outside the house, going into the house.
A Sam Raimi style sweep into the house, and it goes all the way up to the photo of his wife, and then like fucks around with other things. By the way, there's so much foreshadowing around the dog, and I was just like, please don't kill the dog. And then the moment the dog ran off and I heard it no more, I was like, that dog's dead.
Very gotta kill the dog. Yeah. Well, he can't love anyone. I guess that includes animals.
Can't love dogs. Yeah, it's true.
The ADR for that dog sucked. I don't know what was wrong.
But yeah, all that dog's dialogue off camera.
Yeah, no, it was just like a weird bark that was edited in really poorly a couple of times. Like, it didn't make sense. It took me out of it each time. I was just like, that dog's.
That's why it stood out so much, because it just did that. And I was like, something's going to fucking happen to this dog. They wouldn't ADR it so poorly if they didn't care.
They're really trying to draw attention to it through its weird bark. The picture that he turned away on his desk while he was looking at the resumes
is his wife's.
Which I'm like, you feel guilty about it, but you're doing it. Like, I don't know. That's kind of weird.
I feel like that speaks to that kind of, there's a hypocrisy
sort of guilty,
right?
Yeah.
Like, why not embrace it if you're doing it? Why would you want to keep this picture? It's almost like he perpetuates cheating into the afterlife. And is like, don't like, look, honey, I'm going to move on with my life. And he even has like, right after this, he has sort of a dream sequence where he thinks about that. But yeah, this is where we get into it, because he comes home and we get with that like Sam Raimi camera, the shaky cam, it goes all the way up to that photo of his wife. And then it goes right back out into like the living room. And then it goes right into his whiskey decanter. And then it just stops and goes into like, all right, now we're here in the house. We don't see any sign of whatever the fuck that was. We assume it's her. We're free too, but I don't know. Could be something else. Yeah. And then he just comes in and is like, I'm going to pour myself a drink, pours it. And then immediately has this like a verse. Really, he just passes the fuck out. And
he has like one sip, honestly, right? He takes like
fast,
not
acting.
even like a shot worth, but like one sip, and I was like, wow, she really fucking drugged that.
Yeah,
if she was able to drug the decanter enough that one sip takes you to the floor.
She might as well have just powdered the side of the glass so that it penetrates his fingers or some shit. I don't know. Like, it acted so fast, but like that. Yeah, he just falls. And this is another part of the movie where it made me, that fall was so hard, or maybe the ADR, like maybe the fucking actual audio on it, but it looked so genuine. Like he fucking cracked his skull pretty much on like the floor. It's intense. But he falls like right into a dream sequence. And this is where everything gets fucking weird and melded.
Yeah. I don't even know the order of events at this point because it just jumps around, but
it really doesn't matter because it's just kind of like, oh my God, what's happening? Where are we? How do we get grounded?
We see conversations at the restaurants that are things we didn't hear.
Yep. His wife is at the restaurant too, right?
Yeah. And she's like, don't.
She's terrible. Like she's a bad person or something.
Yeah. I guess he asked for approval sort of like, hey, I'm in love. And his wife is like, no, not her. Yeah. It isn't like anyone but her. I do like to think, my headcanon, those were the conversations in the restaurants and he just chose to ignore those things.
Yeah.
Like those were the red flags that he glossed over in his mind because he had already was so infatuated with her. We cut between that and back to her room where the bag opens up. We see our main character there. Again, it's confusing as to like, did that happen? Was he there? Does he know about this, or is the bag even real? And it's not clear. A man uncomfortably, just in his underwear, climbs out of the bag on all fours. His feet have been cut off.
He's missing fingers.
He's missing his fingers. He like looks up to our main character and like growls, tries to utter some sound, and he has no tongue, we can see. And I guess one of his ears is missing.
Yeah.
The main actress is barfing into a dog bowl in the background.
Yeah.
And then brings it forward and gives it to this guy who happily eats out of it.
I feel like this would give David Lynch nightmares.
Yes. Yes. And this is definitely like the moment that is just, it's so fucked up. I mean, like the rest of it is like a slow fucked up. This is just like an immediately like, nope. Nope. Like, that's this is fucking weird. This is wrong. If I
was there in his situation, I would just repeatedly be saying, I want to go home. I want to go home right now.
Yeah.
Not happening.
Good use of effect work.
Yeah.
You kind of, not, to the level of like a Cronenberg, but similarly kind of body horror. Mm-hmm. In that it's like really uncomfortable the way the person's moved. You definitely get this feeling of like they've lost their own humanity. Like they've been here, I guess, 18 months. If it's the music director.
I mean, the fact that
been here 18 months in and out of a bag.
Lapping up without a tongue, like vomit, like the derivative of another human's digestive system. That's like in and of its own thing. Like, you've lost any will. Like you're just surviving on some kind of weird instinct. And he also turns and says that it's great. He says like it's oishi. It's delicious when he's eating it. You're like, oh fuck.
Yeah. She definitely has a thing for feet, or for not having feet, I guess.
Well, she was at ballet. She was in ballet, so maybe she wants to take the feet of all the people who fucked her up when she was trying to just dance.
I was also thinking, maybe it's taking that away, but also the like they can't leave me kind of vibes.
Too. Yeah, I could see that.
It's like they can't say bad things about me or talk to other people. I'll cut their tongue out. They can't leave me. I cut their feet off. Like, yeah.
Cut most of their fingers off. They can't touch me.
Yeah, I guess we heard that the owner of the bar, there was some mention by that neighbor who just kept telling more and more details about the shit about like
a gossipy dude.
Yeah, somebody found out that she was some guy's girlfriend and that cheated one way or the other or something and killed her. That seemed to be the thing.
Yeah.
So seemingly she was set off by finding out he had another girlfriend or previous ex or something, in the same way that she was set off by seeing his wife's picture.
Yeah, I guess so. She's fucking...
I'm sure he told her he had a dead wife. I would think that came up in
Who knows?
conversation.
He's a big Hollywood producer. Japanese Hollywood producer. I don't know what their cinema circuit is like.
Tokyo Wood? What do they call it? I don't know. And so we're flashing between that weird shit, weird conversations at the restaurant, weird sexual imagery. She's seemingly trying to go down on him, but she transforms into like all the different girls in his life, including his sons. The secretary like looks up at him one point and was like, "We had sex one time, and I thought something was going to come of it, and it didn't."
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, that's sad. Sad for her. Bummer."
Eventually, he wakes back up, and he's at the hotel at the beach with her after they've just had sex, and he immediately like looks at his feet, right?
No. This is so like after that dream sequence when he falls through, then he really wakes up to,
I guess he cuts back,
being drugged, and she has all of her surgical equipment on. She's got like an apron and leather gloves, and it's like all solidified, and she's basically just like, now I'm going to torture you because you're a piece of shit. And I know you're just like all the other men.
Rest,
and that's all I've got to do. And so she's got like this big old medical bag of her fucking tools. We saw like in that too, there was like a flashback where she grabs piano wire and fucking pulls it hard against that music teacher and cuts his fucking neck off.
Clean off. Yeah.
Really fucking wild shit. But he's trying to, we're in the end stage here. Whereas like an audience member, I'm just like, look, like whatever he's done, like, let's just get the camera to like move out of this room. Okay. Like, I don't want to be here for what's going to happen. Cause he's clearly way too drugged to actually do anything. He's anesthetized. His son is away, at like a friend's house, which is like a voicemail we hear. And she's like, all right, well, it's time to go to work. I'm going to just show you how much I love you. And she's fucking putting needles in him, doing like the worst acupuncture and like sitting over those.
Yeah, she's talking about like how he's knocked out, but he's going to feel this. And then she's like, I'm starting with your stomach because your stomach feels a lot.
Oh my God. And she's putting everything deeper and deeper.
Yeah, she's doing this little like, really pushing it. This isn't like acupuncture. She starts off as like acupuncture and then she really pushes it in. Like it's really uncomfortable. And yeah, she says this like kitty, 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 like a little like playful thing as she's doing it. This is the only like emotion I swear we see from this character at all through this movie is her now like really fucking enjoying this. Yeah. Really creepily enjoying this.
It's so fucking awful. And then she gets down to the point where after she's put like needles everywhere on his stomach, she like slides up on top of those so that they dive in deeper. And then she puts them into his like eyes, like his lids anyway. And we get to see that from like his POV too. It's just fucking brutal. Then she goes down to the foot and is like locking his feet in and it's like, all right, we're going to do this. And she pulls the piano wire out and it's like fucking sawing through one foot and he passes out at that point. And that's when he wakes up and it has that moment where it's like, was it all a dream or what? Because he wakes back up at the hotel and she's there with him and it's like post-coital and she's laying next to him and he's like freaking out. And he wakes up
his foot's still there.
Yeah. And he grabs his foot and he immediately is like, oh my God, my foot is so great. Goes into the bathroom and is like trying to wash his face. And it's like, what the fuck is going on? And like, I'm confused. It's super,
because all these time jumps now, it's been very confusing. He then proposes to her there. We never saw him propose before.
Which he doesn't even remember doing that. She talks about being proposed to and he's like, I guess I did. Just a whole moment of lapse of continuity. And it like is long enough of a sequence that he lures himself back into kind of comfort of like, oh yeah, like maybe it worked. It's almost like the movie gives you that moment of like, here's what the happy ending was. Here's how Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan got together. And here's what's like, whatever. And then when Tom Hanks falls asleep, like, fuck him. He's going to wake back up where he was.
A rom-com where in the middle of it, one of the characters dreams the other one is a serial murderer.
Oh, man. Dude, that would be a wild movie, too.
Yeah, and then it just ends normally. Like, it just goes on the normal, like, rom-com, and they end up together.
Do you know how crazy of a movie? That's a great idea, Ryan. We should do... where a character
just have a fever dream in the middle of it.
One of them has a psychosis triggering dream. It just throws them. But yeah, like then he wakes back up and he's back. It's a nightmare for the audience and him.
Yeah, and you're so disoriented, like you said, Lynchian, by all of this like time jump and did he see, what didn't he see, what happened, didn't happen.
Yeah.
I do think like when he wakes up from that and he's like, okay, and goes and lays back down to her. I was trying to think like I have weird fucked up dreams, like really bizarre dreams.
Yeah. I had ones right after this.
Yeah, I definitely we can get into our weird ass dreams. But I was trying to think if I had that dream now, I've been married to my wife for 16 years.
Yeah.
I think I would be like, well, that was really fucking weird. But if I'd known her for like a week,
yeah.
and that happened, it would be unsettling. Like, even if it wasn't real, I think I would have to take some time to just be like, why did my mind come up with all of that? If that not like, turns out that was fake.
Yeah. You would be like quietly contemplating it while you're brushing your teeth in the mirror. Like, taking a little bit longer of a break or reply time to text messages.
I will say I had a dream a few weeks ago. I don't remember what happened in it, but it was one of those where like in the dream, and then I woke up and Darla was like telling me something, like she was kind of like smacking me like on the shoulder or whatever in bed, and she's like looking for something or whatever, and I'm like, honey, like you were dreaming. Yeah. Like it's fine. Like you're dreaming. Go back to sleep. And she goes, "No, you're dreaming." And then I woke up for real.
Oh shit! Oh, that's fucked. Oh my god, that's insane. That scares me the most. I hate those like what is reality dreams. And I've had like those fucking dreams where it's like 5 layers of being in a dream, and I'm just like, I just want it to end. I just want to wake up. Just fucking make it happen. Yeah, like this movie triggered that for me, where I was like, I just want to go back to, and it's masochistic. It's got like a sadism to it that it gives you a quick out where it's like his foot's back. He's wiping his face with the water and he's like, what's going on? The only way that it could have been, I guess like more like hit you in the face with that. And I'm glad it didn't, was if, he went on to see his son, get a girlfriend or go to college or some shit, it just fucking does that like full, let's just ride it out. And then it cuts right back to like, nope, you're passed out on the floor. I'm kind of glad it didn't let the thread go for too long. And instead it was just like, a moment. Let's just fucking go back. Like right now you're snapping out of it. Your adrenaline is probably racing. So you're going to come back up and here you are in the middle of the floor with your foot fucking cut off and thrown against a mirror. I love the way that she's just so carelessly, she's not like a serial killer that prizes those parts of the appendage. Like the fact that she left an ear and 3 fingers maybe on the floor of that bar. Probably the result of her just being like, I don't fucking care about that shit. I just want you to feel this right now. So she grabs that foot and just chucks it. Done. But yeah, like we're at that point I was in like this edge of my seat. I'm like, what is he going to fucking do? Cause he's flopping like Leo in Wolf of Wall Street. He's got like fucking lewds in his system and shit.
Like trying to climb up the stairs.
Get out. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like flopping around trying. Does his son call and leave another message? We hear from his son that his son's coming home. His son just comes home.
The door just opens and that's when she realizes, because she's about to get started on the other leg. And his son's like, hey, Dad, I'm home. My friend was sick, so I guess I'm just here. And then he just continues. He's like, you there, Dad? I'm like calling you.
He goes, it was a whole thing. We had to call an ambulance.
He's like nonchalant about it.
I was like, what?
Yeah, it's a real bummer, Dad. My friend's dead. It's a real bummer. Yeah. And that's like, this is like the end game. It's like ratcheting so much tension. You're like seeing him. He's clearly on the ground, like flopping and trying to like tell his son something. And she's gone. You see the door close wherever she's gone to hide. And before she does that, she grabs something out of her bag. Who knows what the fuck it's supposed to be.
Right.
And you're just like, oh my God, no. And like right before, did he do his dream sequence right before his son sees him? Cause like she comes up behind his son and then something flashes and it's like a bunch of visions.
He has another set of visions. Yeah. It's sort of like 3 times. It's very disorienting.
Yeah.
Yeah. She comes up behind the son and almost looks like she shoots him.
Yeah.
And then he cuts. Yeah. Maybe that's when he cuts to the waking up out of bed and all of it. Yeah. And then we come back and she's got, I guess, like mace spray or something.
Some
like
kind of sleep potion?
I
don't fucking know, but she's chasing the son around and
he goes upstairs because that's what you do.
That is the smartest choice in this instance. I know we've talked about Texas Chainsaw Massacre last year and how dumb it was that somebody went upstairs at one point knowing that there was no way out or some shit like that. It was a little questionable decision then. Now his son knows that layout. That's what it was. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Somebody goes into a house that they don't know what the upstairs is. And they go, right. Here, he's like, I know what the upstairs is and how to defend myself there. And
maybe
he goes
up
a room
and that locks or something.
Yeah, he does like a super kick. He does a fucking super kick on her It's like a wrestler move.
Yeah.
Fucking kicks her all the way to the bottom of the stairs and breaks her neck, basically. Just brutal fucking moment. But
then,
it's
yeah, I
like the
guess
end.
that's pretty much it. Yeah, they get the relief. She lays there seemingly still alive, dying as she says shit to our main character.
That's another
repeats
like
what she had said before.
Unreliable narrator moment where it's like, is he looking into her dying eyes and seeing like the phrases that she told him that won him over? Like, is that surfacing of regret that I believed you? I was so blind to believe that this person could have those feelings for me, or is she actually doing it because she's also in a
like
stage of psychosis
fucking with him,
just
or
mentally
she
broken?
really did believe that stuff? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's the like maybe the first date they have after he waited to call her, where she says something like, "I'm so excited, I thought I would never see you again," or
exactly.
whatever.
Yeah. So I feel like it's that like I'm being fucked with, like I was being fucked with maybe. But
Yeah.
again, it doesn't really matter. It is supposed to just elicit those like thoughts of why would she say that? What's going on? But it's doing like a slow zoom into her while her neck's like broken and she's saying that. And his son called the police, and his son's also just like, I feel like his son didn't handle that police call well, but that's just me being a fucking like, I don't know, maybe I'm too opinionated about it, but he's just like, yeah, my dad, something happened and his like foot's cut off or stuff.
Yeah, like send an ambulance. Yeah.
Just send an ambulance. And I was like, man,
there's a murder lady in my house.
I've heard
I do wonder though, I was like, when his
make calls better than he did.
Yeah.
Like,
I did wonder when he like first walked in the house, I was like, how long does it take you to go from like, Dad, is this a sex thing, to, oh fuck, Dad, are you okay?
yeah. Like if I saw somebody on the ground, I would just be like, oh my God, oh no. Like what the fuck? But I guess in this instance, oh Dad, you rascal. Getting into those sex things again.
It's also like that. I do wonder, like cultural burial, you know, I'm like, people call the police for all kinds of shit in America all the time. Like is just more crime and expectation of crime and stuff that maybe, I don't know how much maybe that is like,
maybe they're like, we should
he was
assess
prepared
the situation.
For. Yeah.
That's why you need to be strong against crime, Ryan. You need to always have a rope under your bed that you can crawl down the side of your building on. And you
completely
prep your family to be murdered.
Yeah, we do murder. We do serial murder drills.
Oh God, they could break in at any time, kids.
Yeah, they could. Don't go up the stairs.
The easiest way to win is to gouge his eyes.
Yeah, and then assume he's going to come back from the dead. They always come back.
They always do. I show my family Jason 1 through X every year.
Sometimes it turns out they're demonically possessed, and a little baby them comes out of them. Like, don't trust it. Like way too many contingency
You're just
plans.
Educating your kids on Bride of Chucky and some other shit.
Yeah, you have to say the voodoo words backwards in order to get his soul out of the doll.
Oh my God. So much education from film we could have, including this movie. But yeah, like at that point, it's kind of like plays out. It's very melancholy ending.
Yeah.
For something that
you almost feel just like
terrifying.
It's done. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
there's no true catharsis, or actually, you know, I would say like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You get kind of that feeling too, right? Because like so many of them are dead. You get some like very uncomfortable, fucked up shit you sit through. And then it's just like him dancing with the chainsaw, and you're like, how am I supposed to feel about this?
Yeah, he's like still out there kind of thing.
Yeah, like didn't really get the retribution you expect. I mean, she dies, but our, you know, hero, quote unquote, our main character is not left well.
Yeah, he's bleeding out. Who knows if he'll make it by the time the ambulance gets there. Right. And even if he does, he's going on to live a scarred life where he will most likely be even more misogynistic.
Yeah, you're right. He won't trust anyone, especially women. Yeah, I don't think he'll remarry. So you don't have the like final girl, like the final girl kind of thing in a slasher movie. She comes out clean. Yeah. This is like, no, the characters don't go. Even in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I guess the one character is like fine-ish, I guess.
Yeah.
But you always end up mentally fucked up. I don't really thought about that. They kind of always make it like, yay, Laurie Strode got away. But I'm like, dude, she's fucked up.
She's just having a terrible time. And it's like here too. And part of me, this is where like the movie, I feel like did a really good job Like we've talked about before with its voyeuristic angles, with the way that it presents a lot of the unsettling material and sort of this human story. Both characters are tragic. We don't really know if she's nearly as tragic because she's kind of at this point, we know she was abused. There's no way somebody turns out that way without some kind of abuse or some mental trauma.
Something
Maybe
triggers it.
Something that did this to her to make her have these expectations and want to carry this out against different like men of a certain caliber. Like these are producers. They're in their 40s. Who fucking knows? Supposedly the dance instructor masturbated to her dancing and like burned her legs.
In one of the visions we fly by.
Yeah. Who knows if that's true or not, but that's like what her truth and what she's maybe saying and like how he's interpreted it. And he being widowed and like vulnerable, but also that mix of vulnerability and his widowed nature and his misogyny, his inherent like masculinity and misogyny leads into this, like, they're almost compelled to go toward each other in a way, like she, not so much because he is who he is, but just because he fits an archetype for her to kill. And similarly, she fits an archetype for him to like love and try to like almost raise. There's a weird, he wants to be in like a fatherly thing to her. And that's where like the melancholy at the end of the film kind of comes in, is like, you just feel sad and upset and fucking like, why did this have to happen? But not necessarily for the characters, for the circumstance. Like he made his bed and he's sleeping in it at this point. And same to her. She fucking did this and now she got her neck broke by getting kicked off some stairs. But there is this underlying like, God, there's so much pain and suffering between these two humans. It just, it weighs through the credits. It's, it's wild.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Darla was like, he didn't deserve that, which I think also adds to that, right? There is a certain amount of, in a horror movie, well, not slashers more so, I guess, sort of the slasher archetype. There is this like, rule breaking or taboo or something that kind of gets a few of the characters. Also, they tend to just die. Like they're usually not tortured for an exceedingly long period of time as this character is.
They're thrown on a hook or they're fucking stabbed.
And then it's done. Yeah.
Whatever,
there are seemingly people who just die, especially movies that have, like huge body counts. They just kill people, without any care. So you do have a little bit of like, this character doesn't deserve, and you don't necessarily think that about like, oh, they didn't deserve Freddy Krueger killing him in their dream usually, right? Like, but if it was that Freddy Krueger took a day to slowly kill them, you'd be like, that's really fucked up. That somehow becomes way more fucked up. So I think this movie does kind of flip the tropes a little bit of like, it isn't just like a kill and then you're like, wow, that sucks that he fell into her trap, right? It could have just been honestly like kind of a drama, right? It didn't have the weird fucked up shit and she killed him and you're just left with this like, he's ignored all the red flags and let this go, and he was thinking he could get something he couldn't attain and, had this obsession that was unrealistic. And then you kind of walk away thinking about that, but it's like the slow drawn out torture of it does turn into this like, well, not that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really excessive is how it feels because of the physical manifestation of it. It's weird because I feel like if she did something emotional, I would be like, well, now this is just kind of like them volleying back and forth. Like he's getting what he bargained for. But when it becomes like a physical
if she like burned
realm,
his house down, you'd be like,
I'd be like, oh, come on. Like, wait. And I think that's like a majority of some of this after I watched the movie, I went and looked at like some people's takes, and there's definitely that like, man, that seemed excessive for him to get that. But I was also like, there's a lot of like micro steps that he takes toward getting that, where he like ignored anything that could have protected him from it. And I'm a person who will abide by that logic. Like, Ryan, I told you not to watch Sphere because the characters are fucking stupid in it. And it's kind of that thing where like you make a number of irrational decisions, and after a certain point, you're kind of asking for it, which is like, not a great thing to say, but as an audience member, you're like, come on, man, what'd you expect? If you keep calling Billy's name when you go into the abandoned house, you're going to get killed by the axe murderer. Like, what do you want? So yeah, that's like the melancholy, the mix up is seeing that come back to humanity. It's watching like the character die out or a part of them die or be killed. And I think in that moment, like she's killed for her tragic sort of determination to take out her aggression on all of the men who fit the profile of a man or men who have abused her in the past. And he has like lost his foot. He's endured all this pain that was caused by his kind of like his undermining and underestimating somebody and like the level of value you should put into a relationship. Like I have a weird suspicion or like a weird wonder if there is any kind of world where this movie or the story could play out in a way that like he was actually patient and he let it cool and he called her and then admitted to her that it was a ruse, that like he like, I don't know what I was thinking. We had this audition and I really wanted to do whatever. And if that would like change her mind at all, it's like wild to kind of contemplate. Who knows?
You're writing a rom-com, John.
I'm writing a rom-com.
No, because think about it. That would be exactly. They set this thing up. The guy reluctantly does it. Yeah, his friend Ryan
he tries
Reynolds
to make the prettiest girl in school or the ugliest girl in school pretty, and
and then he has to tell her partway through that this was a thing, but he's actually fallen in love with her, and then she gets mad, but then they get back together.
I am writing a rom-com right now, and again, I want Tom Hanks to be in the reboot of this movie, the Western audience version, but don't change anything about it. Just let it ride.
Yeah. And there is definitely, he is abusing his situation and his power, right? And he does that seemingly with his secretary. If that was true, he abused his power situation there. This audition, whatever his intentions were or weren't, as far as she saw it, it was just another exploitive audition, of which most are.
Yep.
And it's the way he goes about calling her and taking her out to these places and all that. Like, he's very much exploiting her.
Yeah.
Throughout all of it. It does feel like it doesn't necessarily match the violence match the level of
the scales of justice don't necessarily weigh out.
Yeah. There is a certain feeling of like a bit of a feminist revenge that she is getting him back and this, previous producer or whatever, and then her abuser. And I do think it's interesting that she mentions in her essay at the top that like, oh, she felt death, right? Or it was akin to death. And I don't know what she says about moving forward, but our main character is like, oh, and then you get to move forward. Like you can like move forward.
You carry that and realize. Yeah. And there's like silence when he says that too. Like she doesn't
gel with that. Yeah. I do think she totally like, cause she kills, if we believe it, she kills the owner of the bar, but she keeps the producer alive. And it seems she intended to keep our main character alive. She's giving them like loss and pain and leaving them alive. Right? Of like, it's worse. She's seeing this as a bigger punishment than killing. Honestly, maybe it is. And putting them into a state like this and then making them fully reliant on her as well. That's like, they can't exploit or anything without her. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting take on that. I was like, I definitely think she's got this, like, see how you live without afterwards. Like,
prolonged
can you?
Suffering.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Just brutal. Brutal movie.
brutal. Yeah. And what's interesting is it as, like, absolutely awkward and uncomfortable, and it's drawn out. I think that's really what makes it, is it's drawn out. It isn't isn't Eli Roth.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not.
Like, yeah, even though we described something that totally could have been an Eli Roth movie, it cuts away at like just the right time, and it does some of the stuff the Hitchcock way of like, you don't exactly see it, so you get to,
but your mind imagines
kind of conclude it. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Sort of how it goes.
Which it maybe makes it worse.
Could, but at least I didn't have to see it. I just had to think it. That's cool with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to actually see the foot come off. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Once it became a dummy foot, I was happy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So final take on the movie. Does it say recommends, John?
Yeah, I would recommend this movie. This is in league with, I thought about Old Boy when I got to the end of this.
Yeah.
Has that same kind of like, it's a revenge story in its own way, and it's really fucking disturbing and fucked up. And like it just turned so much of my expectations against me of what would like happen and how it would happen. And again, like the way that the camera work is done, the shots, the overall sort of just different, like when we get to the dream sequence, it's like just enough. I feel like it's not too much. It doesn't overly fuck with your sense of reality. It does it like surgically throughout the movie in a really well done way. And so I feel like it works as a horror movie, and it gave me fucking nightmares that night. I think I woke up the next morning because I thought I was being choked by this woman. And it was like the same kind of, it wasn't like from the movie, but I just had that same vibe that I was like, this is because of the movie. Like, I don't think that I wake up often and think this is a nightmare because of a movie I watched. And here I was doing that. So, I would recommend it. I mean, probably watch it during the day and then, just like let your brain kind of work it out, talk with some friends before you sleep at night, maybe. I don't know. But, would recommend.
Yeah, Darla said, "Oh, great, and this is like gonna give me nightmares now." And I was like, "Oh no!" And then I was the one that totally had it. I did kick someone in the chest in my dream, so yeah, I guess I picked up a little bit of it.
Yeah,
and I think that I still recommend this movie. It's good coming back to it. I vaguely misremembered that she had somehow set up some of the events to end up with him. But seeing it now, I'm like, nah, that's not an interpretation. I don't know why I had misremembered it that way.
Girling him or something?
Yeah, that she somehow like knew to set up the audition or something. And but I was like, he's fucking spilled. As soon as he spilled the coffee on the thing, I was like, well, no, that can't. She couldn't possibly have.
She brewed
made him become a. Yeah, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But I think this is an interesting movie. It's an interesting like horror uncomfortableness that, even having seen it before, unsettled me again. And I do remember it being like really unsettled in the past. So I think this is definitely a watch. If you can stomach it.
Yeah, that's the main hump they have to get over.
It is probably that like one step beyond. Like, this isn't the horror movie that the kids go watch, right?
Yeah,
like
this isn't like spooky clown scare me. Let's cut to a jump scare kind of thing. This is like, ooh, no, none of this.
Yeah, this is definitely the like somebody says to you like, oh, I really want to see something that like fucks me up or I'm like upset with. Like, this is pretty good. Yeah, this will do it.
Yeah, not bad.
This will get you there. All right, well, I think that covers it for this episode. Hopefully you're as unsettled as we are. Listen to this episode during the day.
Yeah. Super spooky recap.
I've been your host, Ryan King. With me, as always,
John Garcia. And Dixon isn't here, so thank you for putting up with the lack of his bullshit.
Yeah, and we were told we couldn't license Dixon Bot anymore.
Yeah, Dixon Bot is broken down. If anybody remembers us ever having that, it is now in a dumpster somewhere, and it'll never come back. Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.